Hi, folks. Welcome to a very special episode of Be Healthistic. Recently, my dad and I did a Facebook Live Ask the Doctors event to answer the questions that our audience had about stress and health. We're sharing that here so you can get all the benefits of this valuable information. Let us know what you think about this Q&A by sending us an email at podcasts@healthydirections.com. If you like it, we'll make sure we do more of these and invite you to ask your questions.
Welcome to Be Healthistic, the podcast that's more than just health and wellness information. It's here to help you explore your options across traditional and natural medicine so that you can make informed decisions for you and your family. This podcast illuminates the whole story about holistic health by providing access to the expertise of Drs. Steve and Drew Sinatra, who together have decades of integrative health experience. Be Healthistic is powered by our friends at Healthy Directions. Now, let's join our hosts.
Hi, folks. If you like what you hear today and you want to listen to future conversations on all things integrative and holistic health, subscribe to our podcast at behealthisticpodcast.com. Also, check out and subscribe to the Healthy Directions YouTube channel, which features video versions of our episodes plus extra videos you won't want to miss. And finally, we have more with me, Dr. Drew Sinatra, my dad, Dr. Steve Sinatra, and other health experts at healthydirections.com.
All right, welcome everyone to this live Facebook event with my father and I. It's the Ask the Doctor series, where you submit your questions and we provide some answers for you. Today's topic is going to be all about maintaining a healthy mind, body, and spirit during this unprecedented time. And we're going to be talking about all sorts of things today, from immune health to cardiovascular health, to certain foods you can eat to help support your immune system during this season. So lots we're going to be discussing here. Now, Dad, we've had lots of questions about immune health during the winter months coming up. What are your go-tos for supporting the immune system?
Well, if you look at diet, foods, I'm a big proponent of onions, again, because of the quercetin factor. And the quercetin is, even in the news these days, it's incredible. Certainly garlic. Remember during World War II, garlic was Russian penicillin. I mean, it kills bacteria, viruses, microbes, even parasites. So I would say choosing foods like avocados, artichoke supports liver function. And then there's a whole host of supplements you can use to support immune function, whether it's vitamin C, ashwagandha, vitamin D. We've had talks on vitamin D, omega-3 essential fatty acids. So the list goes on and on. But the key here is less sugar. Yep. We're all in agreement about that. Foods to support the immune system, and targeted nutritional supplements to also support the immune system. Because I have to tell you, after studying this COVID and, the immune system situation over the last, 6 or 7 months, it looks like that the immune system is the key right here. I mean, let's face it. Why are the elderly and compromised people, whether it's cancer, heart disease, neurodegenerative disease, why are these people the first to succumb to viruses, whether it's, a SARS virus or, a Coxsackie virus or any virus? Mm-hmm. It's because their immune system is compromised. Yes. So the key going forward is to support the immune system.
Yeah, and Dad, I want to echo exactly what you said there with all the supplements and everything. And I don't want us to forget either about the basics of just immune health, which is like proper sleep, right? A clean diet, it's exercising, doing some form of, stress reduction practice in your life, because all these pillars, so to speak, are really going to help support your overall health and your immune health. So I think sometimes people like to, reach for the vitamin C or the vitamin D, but also there's things just right now you can do, which is like go for a walk in the woods or making sure you get a good night's sleep to make sure your immune system is primed up and ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you're really big on walking in the woods. I mean, you're a wilderness guy. So, so that's really good. Drew, another thing I want to mention is that, I've been a CoQ10 guy for like 30, almost 40 years.
Yes.
And I had to prepare a lecture for the A4M. I have to actually submit my slides this Friday. And the literature on coenzyme Q10 is exploding. I mean, exploding. Endothelial cell dysfunction is one of the parameters where, the ACE2 receptor locks in with the virus and blah, 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 but it causes endothelial cell dysfunction. And then all of a sudden, everything breaks down. You get clotting in the lung and you get clots in the brain and this and that. But the best supplement is coenzyme Q10 in supporting endothelial cell function. I mean, think about that.
It makes sense.
And, I got 40 years of experience in it. And again, while I'm preparing for this lecture, I am amazed. I am absolutely amazed of all the literature and the double-blind trials going on coenzyme Q10, even as we talk right now.
And Dad, is there an age group that you recommend people start taking CoQ10 at? I'm just curious.
Well, I gave it to you as a young child, but I would say, I would say from 20 years old and on up. I mean,
okay.
One thing about CoQ10, the younger you are, the more you make of it in the body. It's only when you get into the 80s. And, I had a discussion with Carl Folkers. I don't know if you know who Carl Folkers was.
Of course,
he was the father of coenzyme Q10. Yep. In fact, I gave him the Affinity Award in front of an audience of 5,000 at the A4M meeting about, 20 years ago. And, coenzyme Q10 is one of those miracle nutrients that just supports everything in the body. But the problem is, as we age, it's not made effectively in the body. And I remember talking to Folkers, I couldn't understand why more women had heart failure in the eighth decade of life than men. I couldn't figure that out as a cardiologist. Mm-hmm. So I asked him, and he said to me, and we're on the telephone, he goes, "You should know the answer to that question. You're a board certified cardiologist. How dare you? You are, you should know that answer." And I said, "Unfortunately, Dr. Folkers, I don't." You know what he said to me? He said, "A woman's liver does not make coenzyme Q10 efficiently when she's 80 as opposed to a man's liver. That's why there's more heart failure in women." He spit that out like it was nothing. And I said, "Okay, I got it." You know what I mean?
Oh, it's amazing. That's great.
So anyway, for any women listening who are 80 and above, coenzyme Q10 is a must for you.
Well, this kind of leads into our next question, Dad, which a lot of people are asking about blood pressure and how their blood pressure is higher these days because of stress. We know that CoQ10 can have a little bit of a mild effect on lowering blood pressure. What are you recommending for people during these times of high stress and it affecting their blood pressure?
Well, the most important thing that I can say is that when you're under stress, your autonomic nervous system is going to discharge a lot of adrenaline, noradrenaline. It's going to cause, blood pressure to go up, heart rate possibly to go up. It may create fear and panic, which are very undesirable emotions to have. Mm-hmm. So, going forward, I think the best thing is to have your feelings. In other words, if you're feeling depressed, which a lot of us are because, we're indoors, we can't go outside. Now mandates may come in, a national mandate on the mask or, not going to restaurant. I mean, it could get worse before it gets better. Yeah. So my plea to our listeners is whatever emotion you're feeling, just feel it. If it's anger, get angry. Don't go into rage, though. Rage is uncontrolled anger. You can do that is not okay. But having your anger out and the opposite of anger is sadness. So I would tell our listeners that if you're depressed, cry it out. Please cry. Have your emotions out. It's better having the emotion out than stifling the emotion and having a stroke or a heart attack. And that's what we're seeing right now during, these situations, whether it's wartime or whether it's, social unrest or whatever it is. Yeah. When unemployment goes up, for example, we get more heart attacks. I mean, more depression. So my plea here is have the emotions out. It's very, very important to experience the emotion. Don't stifle it because then it can go to the heart or the central nervous system, and that can cause injury.
Yeah, and I think we'll get into this later too, Dad, during the show today. And that's you got to work on things in your life that are bringing in lots of stress, whether it is watching the news and seeing how many new cases there are and all these new mandates that might be put in. It's fear-inducing. And what I've been telling my patients lately is to take a break. Take a break from listening to the media, watching the media, being on Facebook and such, where you're just hearing all this negative stuff and you're seeing lots of fighting between your friends and such. And spend the time with yourself. And it's like, if you want to do more self-care, now is the time to do it. I mean, this is the time to really focus on your health like you've never focused on it before, whether that is your mental health, right? Whether it is sort of like working through the depression and the anxiety that you're feeling, whether it's the extra pounds that you may have put on during coronavirus time, whether it's a condition that you've had like diabetes or cardiovascular disease, right? I mean, we've been talking about this for the last 8 months. There's no better time than now to start working on these things, right? To boost your body up, to put your body in a better state.
Exactly.
So, you know, it's just, you know, and I interviewed Dr. Hartstein on Friday for a podcast, and we were talking all about self-care and how that should not be a selfish thing that people do. If you want to go out and take a walk in the woods with, you know, one of your good friends and tell them exactly how you're feeling about how angry you are or how depressed you are, do that. That is not a selfish thing to go out and spend time, you know, with yourself and with a friend of yours or whoever it may be, to get stuff off your chest, like you were saying, because these emotions can be so toxic for your body.
Absolutely. And Drew, the most important thing is telling the truth. And you mentioned it when you're with a friend, or if you're with a spouse, or if you have you're communicating with a child, always tell the truth. When you tell the truth, the autonomic nervous system knows it's the truth, and you won't get a blip. In other words, the only people that I know that can defy a lie detector test are psychopaths who actually believe their own lies.
Right.
But, you know, telling the truth is so important, especially in the pandemic like this. And remember this.
Yeah.
Remember this. Life is full of risks. I mean, you know, as a heart specialist, I can tell you that life is full of risks. And we're in a pandemic right now. And, you know, I remember talking to, Raj Chopra from Tishcon. He's been indoors for 8 months. And the reason being, you know, he's compromised with his immune system, and he just had his 80th birthday. And he's a brilliant, you know, pharmacologist. There's no doubt about it. And the reason why he's staying indoors is because, you know, he's afraid of getting the virus.
Yeah.
Now, the counterpart of that is, you know, he's 80. He has to take care of himself. He knows his comorbidities. He knows where he lies. But again, let's go back 5-6 decades. You know, getting outdoors is important, and basically assuming some risk is okay. And that's what I want to get to our viewers. You can fortify your immune system and still take some risks at the same time. Life is full of risks. As a heart specialist, you take that one to the bank. But again, if you lock yourself up in jail, you know, and wearing a mask all the time and basically not going anywhere, you're not really living.
Dad, I think that's like the biggest thing I've heard all day. I mean, that's huge right there, what you just said, because I'm so on board with that, because I do feel that too many people are living in fear these days, right? They're just, they're letting fear dominate them. And you got to live your life. You really have to live your life. And I've heard all these stories of people that have not left their homes in 8 months. And I feel like that's tragic. That's absolutely tragic. You know, I mean, you can be very safe by going outside and walking around. We'll probably come and circle back around to kind of these things we're talking about right now. But I wanted to get to, you know, a listener question that's asked all the time. And I mean, I've heard you speak about this probably 24 times in my life, but I always like that you, you know, say it again over and over again so that we all remember. And that's about statins, Dad. And when are statins most effective in people? I mean, what age group are we talking about? Are we talking about primary prevention, secondary prevention? Let's go over really when statins work the best.
Well, you know, I wrote the book, The Great Cholesterol Myth, with Johnny Bowden. I spent years writing the book, studying statins for 20 or 30 years beforehand. Remember, I was a choir boy on statins. I used to speak for Merck and Pfizer, you know, 25 years ago. I really believed in statins when they first came out until I had to do an editorial for a journal. And, you know, they asked me to write this editorial, and I looked at statins from both sides, you know, the dangerous side and the supportive side. But look, here's the bottom line. Statins are cholesterol killers. There's no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. But I don't believe that cholesterol is the prime factor in, you know, atherosclerosis. I think sugar is. I mean, sugar is the enemy. Cholesterol is not. Now, there's a small particle of cholesterol. We call it LP(a). This is a very, very small particle. It's very inflammatory. It's also thrombogenic, meaning that it causes blood clotting. And this particle is really the real cholesterol story. The problem is that statins can make it worse because it's a very, very small particle. Now, do statins have any play in prevention? Or do they have play if suppose you're a 45-year-old guy and you've had a heart attack, or suppose you're 50 and you had a family history of sudden death in a young father or mother, and you have a little coronary calcification, you have some risk factors. Will a low-dose statin help an aging male? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's not for cholesterol lowering, Drew. Remember, statins have pleiotropic effects. Yeah. They can thin the blood, for example, and look, in this day and age of infections and EMF and Wi-Fi, et cetera, we have red ketchup blood. We got to make our blood thinner. We got to make it more like red wine, so to speak. And that's what statins do. It has an antithrombotic effect, a blood thinning effect, and this antioxidant effect. So if you're a young male with coronary artery disease, I like a low dose statin with a lot of coenzyme Q10, to support the side effects.
And when you're saying low dose stat, is that really kind of like, half a typical dose of, Lipitor or something like
10 milligrams, 5 to 10 milligrams, not 40 to 80 milligrams like a lot of my colleagues use, but 5 to 10 milligrams is more than enough when it comes to a statin.
And the great thing about that is you still get the potential positive effects, but you don't get the amount of side effects as you would with a higher dose.
Correct. Absolutely. And again, always chase it with coenzyme Q10, because remember, coenzyme Q10 shares the same biochemical pathway as cholesterol. So if you knock out cholesterol, you're driving coenzyme Q10 levels even lower.
And Dad, with females versus males here, what's the difference there in terms of statin recommendations?
I'm not a big fan of statins in females. I've just seen too many side effects, and there's way more side effects in the female as opposed to the male. That's why gender-specific medicine, when it comes to cardiovascular disease, is going to be very important within the next decade. But if you're a woman who has progressive coronary artery disease, you've had angioplasty, a stent put in, you had bypass surgery, you had a re-bypass, you still have high inflammatory cholesterol, I would use a low-dose statin in that situation, especially if she's going downhill, despite any other therapeutic maneuvers, a healthy diet, less sugars, more antioxidants, more CoQ10, more omega-3s, and she's still going downhill, then I would use a low-dose statin.
Great. Dad, have you seen anything else mitigate the effects of muscle pain or that muscle weakness that people get with statins? Is there anything that you've used before that would help with that? Or do you really just lower the dose? And if that doesn't help with it, well, then maybe statins just aren't for this person.
I lower the dose, and I certainly give omega-3s as an anti-inflammatory and magnesium. I found that magnesium helps many of the musculoskeletal side effects that statins pose. And it's interesting, most people are deficient in magnesium anyway. So it makes sense. I take magnesium every day. And I'll tell you, when I fly fish or when I'm walking in the surf or I'm walking the beach, for exercise, I always take extra magnesium. And I also like D-ribose as well, because in my age group, muscle cramping, can be problematic. And those two supplements actually ease, not only the vasculature, but the vasospasm and also the muscular spasm you get with either over-exercise or sometimes simple walking.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's take some questions here from our audience. This is from Eileen Waits. What are the best vitamins and herbs that you can take for a healthy heart if you have a pacemaker?
Well, if you have a pacemaker, that's not going to make much of a difference. Certainly I like the awesome foursome, in anybody with any cardiac condition. And just to review, the awesome foursome is D-ribose, coenzyme Q10, magnesium, and carnitine. Now, carnitine is something you can take less of. Remember this, there's very few foods that contain carnitine. And the body makes carnitine. Our kidneys make carnitine, right? But, if you eat a lot of lamb, for example, or a lot of beef, you'll probably get sufficient quantities of carnitine. But if you're a vegetarian, you're not going to get the carnitine. Same thing is true of coenzyme Q10. Vegetarians characteristically have low coenzyme Q10 levels in their bloodstream. And I've tested this when I was practicing cardiology on a day-to-day basis, seeing 40 to 60 patients a day, and a lot of these patients were on CoQ10. Drew, I tested hundreds and hundreds of their bloods, looking at CoQ10 blood levels. I mean, I was sending these bloods out, and this is like 20 years ago. And I have to tell you, I was amazed about how many people had low blood levels of coenzyme Q10. And when I look at the literature now showing that more cancers, more heart disease is being incriminated because of low levels of this precious nutrient, it gets me thinking into my mind that this nutrient needs to be supplemented, especially in this day and age, by just about anyone over the age of 20.
Got it. Okay. Well, here's a question. This is from Asa Raf. My family stays quarantined except to exercise outdoors and purchase groceries about once a week, of course, masked. Still, my anxiety is pretty high. A little help. Well,
yeah, I think we answered that question. I think that
we did.
Again, I think you got to give yourself a little more freedom. You really do. I mean, when it comes to social isolation, masks, not getting out of the house, remember your Achilles heel on this is your rigidity. If you become sold on this and you become very rigid in your ways and you're following this to the key, you don't want to be self-destructive while trying to be productive.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, Dad. If Asa was right in front of me, I would ask her, what is your anxiety about? What is it, the fear that you're experiencing? Is it the fear of getting COVID? Is it the fear of having something happen to your body post-COVID? Is it bringing COVID to another family member of yours, right? Perhaps you've got an older parent or grandparent or something like that. I mean, those are all valid concerns, of course. But like you said, I mean, there has to be some level of freedom here in your life because, if you're quarantining yourself when you're not sick, that to me isn't right. I mean, you're supposed to quarantine the ill. That's traditionally how we've done it.
Exactly.
We've quarantined the ill. We have not quarantined the healthy ones. And so there comes a time and a place for this. But I see too many people living in fear these days and staying way too many hours in their home without getting outdoors. And I feel like it's not good. It's not good long term. It's not good short term either.
Yeah, Drew, let me say it this way. I mean, I've been a board certified cardiologist for almost 50 years. And I've seen epidemics come and go, flu-like illnesses in my 30s, 40s, 50s. And I'll never forget it. And I mentioned this before on broadcasts. When any flu comes in to this country, the influenza season, people do die. And influenza can cause myocarditis, which means inflammation of the heart. And I have seen people on ventilators, on respirators, on oxygen therapy. I've seen people, develop heart failure from these respiratory viruses, and they've been here for decades. Will they get worse? Probably, because there's so many people doing experiments with man-made viruses, and accidents may happen in laboratories, and certainly any of these situations can occur. But viruses are here, and if we look at the COVID virus, who's it affecting? It's affecting people in the 80 and above age group,
exactly,
where your immune system is in decline, and all these comorbidities, whether it's heart failure, high blood pressure, diabetes, overweight status, cancer, and the list goes on and on and on. So social isolation is important for the people who have the more comorbidities and the aged. This is where the social isolation may offer some protection. Will it offer protection for a 10-year-old child? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, one more thing, Deb, before we leave this topic here, because I do feel like it's such an important topic these days, is I would recommend that people look into the Great Barrington Declaration. This was written in early October by many different Oxford and Harvard and Yale scientists and researchers and PhDs. And, our colleague, Dr. David Katz, we've had on the podcast before, was one of the original signers of this declaration. And what it talks about is we need to take a very systematic approach to how we protect the elderly and the immunocompromised and those that are more susceptible, like you were saying, 80 plus, in getting really sick and perhaps dying from this virus. And instead of us shutting down the economy over and over and over again, which is affecting, generations ahead of us, right? We focus on certain tactics to help protect those that are most immunocompromised. All right, moving on. Now we're going to take some live questions here from our audience. Let's see what we have here. This is from Kathy Lamadam. Now that I don't have to get up and go into the office, I find myself not moving as much, bed to office to kitchen. And the darkness of 5 p.m. doesn't help. Do you have any favorite exercises or activities to keep me strong and healthy?
Well,
Lots
Drew,
we can, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things you could do on that. I mean, I think walking is the best form of exercise. I mean, I remember I had Tony Little up at my hospital about 25 years ago, and actually, you met Tony. I
remember them. Yeah,
and I took him to the cardiac rehab center and stuff like that, and he asked me because he was a big exercise guy and had a lot of machines and and weights and stuff like that. But he asked me, what the best forms of exercise were. And I said dancing and walking, hands down. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So I would say, Kathy, turn the music on in your home and, do a little dancing, move your hips, move your legs, move your arms, do a little Tai Chi exercises, mold the energy, form the energy, push the energy out, bring it into your heart. There's so many things you can do. And again, if these young kids in the house, and I saw a little video you did, dancing with the kids on a little
get them
trampoline.
involved. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then again, you can turn this, pandemic into a reframe, and show your kids that you're not in fear, and you're dancing on your trampoline, or you're doing some exercises in the home, or you're going out for a walk. When I was living in Florida, a few weeks ago, people were riding bicycles in my neighborhood like it was crazy. I mean, I've never seen so many bicycles. What a great reframe.
Absolutely.
I mean, bicycle riding is a great reframe, of getting outdoors. And, but again, that's Florida. Kathy's living in Washington right now, where it's a little bit colder. But again, I'm in New England right now, and I'm going out for walks, although I have to quarantine because I just came up in Florida. But still, I'm walking around the yard and stuff like that, and raking the leaves and, playing with the cars and having fun.
There you go. Yeah, I'll add to that, Kathy, that I've been doing this online yoga program. It's called Glow. I have no affiliation with them or anything, but I found them online. And what I like about this program is that you can do yoga, you can do fitness classes, you can do Pilates. They have meditation exercises on there. And you can set your time limit. You can even do like a 5 minute, a 10 minute, a 15, 20, 30, 45, 60, or even longer minute session. So you get to choose what time frame you want to use for that, and also what program you want to use, whether it's Pilates or meditation. So I wake up around 7 and I'll do typically like a half an hour yoga or Pilates thing before my kids wake up. And that to me is just great because you just set the day straight right there with getting some exercise, moving your body around. And then if you've got a 5-10 minute break in the middle of the day, set it up again and do some quick exercises where you work on your shoulders, your neck, your lower body. And I feel like that's just a great way to move your body. Yeah. All right, let's take another question here. This is from Paula. My dad's recovering from COVID right now. I was glad to see her recommended vitamin C and D for him, but she only recommended 2,000 IU. I thought that was too low. Okay, what Paula's saying here is that I'm assuming that her doctor recommended vitamin C and vitamin D, but they were a little bit on the lower end of normal at 2,000 IUs.
Yeah, Drew, at least 2,000 IUs of vitamin D is something. I mean, I would recommend up to 5 a day, and I don't think people will get into trouble, especially with the winter months coming on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I take 5,000 a day. I mean, if you're really concerned about your vitamin D level, if you've been on like vitamin D supplementation for a long time, you can certainly get a blood level.
Yeah, well said. All right, let's get another question here from our audience. This is from Jeff. I'm finding myself stress eating more than ever during the pandemic, and I'm worried about putting back on unhealthy weight. Any thoughts on what I should eat that is healthy and maybe lower my stress levels?
Well, I would tell Jeff, again, more fruits and vegetables, certainly, any vegetable at this time would be good. And remember, a lot of these vegetables have phytochemicals or phytonutrients in them that help fight viruses. Again, we talked about onions and garlic, avocados, I think are fantastic, artichokes for the liver. I mean, these are things that I tend to eat every day, and I think it's really important. The worst thing that I think people are putting into their mouths right now is sugar. And, these carbohydrates, dense carbohydrate meals, carbohydrates are transferred to sugar. And remember, if the sugar is not metabolized efficiently, if you're locked indoors, you can't see. If you're outside, if you have a high carbohydrate meal, and if you go for a walk, right, that exercise of a walk is going to, when that sugar is converted with insulin, it gets driven into the cell because the exercise helps the insulin drive the sugar into the cell. But if you're stuck at home and you're not doing anything, you're sort of a zombie, and you're going from bed to chair, or to go into the TV, you're reading a book, you're not exercising, so you're not driving the insulin into that cell, or that sugar into that cell. And what happens is the excess calories are not burned because you're not exercising. Guess what happens? They're stored as fat. So I would tell Jeff, less sugar, a little more exercise, a little more healthier eating, less carbohydrate.
Yeah, and if there was one particular diet that I'd recommend, Dad, it'd be something like a paleo type diet to Jeff, because I feel like in times like this, higher protein can be can be a little bit more helpful, not only in the sense of it'll help satiate you and get you full, but also because when you have protein, it supports your adrenal glands and your whole HPA HPA axis function. And when you do that, you're going to support your blood sugars even better too, because your adrenals are inherently involved in blood sugar regulation. So I do recommend during these times to kind of reach for a little bit of a higher protein food. I mean, if you're into meat, you can do that, of course. There's certain snacks you can make that have high protein in them, and stay away from the really higher carbohydrate, higher sugar foods, which are ultimately, like my dad said, going to lead to more insulin production and weight gain and all that. So higher protein, medium fat, lower carb. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if we have another question here from our audience. This is from Corinne. Please, what's the best thing for ARVD cardiomyopathy? Here in London, the cardiologists are not helping.
ARVD. I'm trying to think what ARVD cardiomyopathy.
Yeah, I'm going to look that one up, Dad.
That's an acronym I haven't heard before. Huh.
Rare form of cardiomyopathy in which the heart muscle of the right ventricle is replaced by fat or by fibrous tissue. It's arrhythmogenic right ventricular dysplasia.
Boy, I'll tell you, I have never seen that before as a heart specialist, but I'm sure it happens. It's probably very rare. Again, I mean, things that I would use in any type of cardiomyopathy would be the awesome foursome, including ribose, magnesium, CoQ10, low dose carnitine. I mean, I just feel in any muscle where you have the muscle involved in the heart. Remember this, Drew, the awesome foursome is driving our stem cells in a preferential direction. I firmly believe this. And it's come out of the stem cell revolution, because I've had so many patients with, quote, dead hearts from massive heart attacks, even my pediatric population who, Drew, I've had patients come in with their children and they're crying in my office, and they can't find heart transplants for their children. And I tell you, I've had so many saves. And, when if people, dispute this, they can always go to Amazon.com and look up my book on metabolic cardiology and look at the testimonials from all these people who had heart failure and people looking for hearts where they couldn't find a heart, but they went on the awesome foursome and they had a resurrection in their life. This gives me great joy because something is working here, and I believe it's through the exosomes, like the messages of the body. They're talking to our intrinsic stem cells, and we're actually resurrecting new heart cells. And that came out of the nuclear testing of the atomic bombs, where we can tell the age through carbon-14 testing, the age of our cells. Remember, we replace our mucous membranes, in our nose every 2 to 3 days, our GI tract every 24 to 72 hours. Our red blood cells are replaced every 120 days. So why can't we replace heart cells? Exactly. We can. It's beautiful. We can. We replace liver cells. We replace them all. All people have to do is basically believe, first of all, make sure the belief is up here, and support your body with good nutritional supports and a healthy diet going forward.
Well, Dad, I didn't know about that potential to increase the body's own production of stem cells there, or at least push them in that direction. That's great.
Yeah, read the article in Science. It was in 2009 about stem cell renewal. Okay. And when the New England Journal came out with an editorial on this, and it was favorable, I was absolutely shocked, because usually the New England Journal is very, very conservative. And when the editorial was favorable, then the same group of researchers out of Sweden recapitulated their data in a 2018 publication, which came out like 9 years later, which documented what they first reproduced 9 years before. So I think the awesome foursome is rejuvenating or our own intrinsic stem cells to build new tissue into our heart cells.
Okay. All right, let's take another question here from our audience. This is from Nisha. What can you do to keep cholesterol at bay when you're breastfeeding?
Interesting question. First of all, I don't mind young children getting cholesterol. Cholesterol does a lot of good things for the body. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if she's worried about transferring, in the mother's milk has a lot of good stuff to it. I mean, I like mother's milk, but remember the mother, if she is going to breastfeed, needs to detoxify her body, because what's good in mother's milk is equally as bad, because a lot of toxins that the mother takes in can be concentrated in breast milk as well. Yeah. So breast milk can be a double-edged sword, but if the mother does some detoxification prior to breastfeeding her body, at least the breast milk will be certainly even much, much better than it normally is.
Got it. Okay. All right, let's see here for another question. This is from Elaine. What is the maximum of CoQ10 one can take? For me, CoQ10, it has been paradise. I take 300 milligrams, and adding pomegranate extract brought my
high blood pressure to
equilibrium. So what do you think, Dad, about that in terms of CoQ10 as a high dose?
Yeah, I mean, 300 milligrams is a good dose. I take about 200 milligrams a day. I mean, I don't have any high blood pressure or any, illnesses that I know about. But just because of my age, I take 200 milligrams. 300 milligrams is fine. And the research on the CoQ10 and high blood pressure is still solid. So, and I do like pomegranate. Pomegranate is an interesting nutraceutical. It can prevent the oxidation of LDL. You can get a little plaque regression with pomegranate. I've seen that. So, I'm a big fan of pomegranate, and I take it myself sometimes. I also like beet juice. I'm a big fan of beet juice because of the nitric oxide.
Yeah. Well, Dad, the season right now for pomegranates is in. So those of you listening that you want to eat some pomegranates, go out and buy some, because they were delicious this year. Let me tell you. Basically, every single night we open up a pomegranate, and our kids, they take their shirts off. We go to the dinner table and we all eat pomegranate for about half an hour. It's awesome. Okay, this is from John Murphy. What do you think of nitric oxide supplements? Well, there we go. Leading in.
Yeah, just moving in. We should tell our audience that this is totally by chance, by the way. You can take nitric oxide supplements. I mean, look, you can get nitric oxide in a lot of natural foods. I mean, even migratory salmon, is a nice, can support nitric oxide. Even astaxanthin, which is an incredible antioxidant. But nitric oxide you can get naturally in the diet, and if you want to eat a lot of beets, I mean that's fine with me. I mean, and foods that contain nitric oxide that are broken down into nitric oxide. I mean, I'm all in. But remember this now: whatever, there's no panaceas in medicine. Years ago, there was some articles that came out where people were going against nitric oxide. I mean, that's the way it is in medicine. It's not a panacea. Some of my colleagues, feel that, overzealous use of nitric oxide could have a downside. But again, I mean, for now, if you want to take a little nitric oxide supplements or get it naturally from foods, that's okay with me.
Got it. And Dad, I remembered the question I was going to ask you, and it was reference to that CoQ10 question previously, was that I remember studies back on CoQ10 and Parkinson's being around, is it 600 milligrams or 1,200 milligrams per day?
Oh, higher, yeah. Actually, they were using it in Huntington's chorea. They were using up to 2 grams of CoQ10. But in Parkinson's, CoQ10, in fact, there's a paper, I just came across it, as I'm preparing this lecture for the A4M, there was a nice paper on CoQ10 and Parkinson's disease. So, any neurodegenerative disease, I would certainly take CoQ10. And if you want to go higher doses, 300, 500 milligrams, 600, certainly you can go higher.
Okay. All right, let's post another question here from our audience. This is from Kathy. Ever since we turned back the clock and it's getting dark so much earlier now, I'm starting to experience SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder. And the pandemic situation isn't helping. What do you recommend to help combat this?
Well, Kathy, I mean, you can always go to the hot lights of yesteryear. You know what I mean? The bright lights that you can bring into your house, and these are natural lighting where you can look into a light for basically a half hour or so, or while you're working on a computer, you can have a light shine on your face. Like I have a light here, but it just went on a blink. My video lighting. I don't know why, but maybe I can show it in the picture here. If I bring it down, see, it's a ring.
Oh yeah,
see that?
See that?
Maybe I can turn it. Basically, this is my media light, and it just went on the blink. But whenever I'm doing media and this light is on my face, I always say to myself, "Oh, I'm getting nice light energy. I'm taking it in through the eyes." And some people think about sun gazing, for example. Now, Kathy, what you can do is before, if you can go out for a walk as the sun is going down, you can just open your eyes and look into the sunlight as it's going down for only 30 seconds to a minute. As the sun's going down, that's sun gazing, and that you're going to get some natural light that I think, even though it's a short term, will help to ameliorate SAD. So. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm all in on that.
And here, Kathy, if you can see mine here, I've got my little happy light. Let's see if I can bring it into view.
Oh, it's a happy light. That's
happy
the right
light.
Keep coming, Drew. I can't see it.
Yeah, you can see it. There it is.
Oh, the happy light. That's what it is.
Very bright, but I have it on right now, and I do this every single day for at least a half an hour, sometimes upwards of an hour.
Well, Drew, where are you living right now? What time is it getting dark? About 4 o'clock?
Too early. Yes, it gets dark a little too early these days. It's around 4:30. So,
okay.
I'm certainly susceptible to getting SAD in the wintertime, and I've been using this. I take high dose vitamin D. And for me, I'm currently taking 10,000 units a day, but I'm measuring my vitamin D, making sure that my calcium levels aren't too high. And I do live in a very, very, very rainy area right now, which is in the Vancouver, Canada area. So 10,000 units per day is okay for me at this point.
I'm glad you mentioned that. What are some of the contraindications for taking very high dose vitamin D? Certainly, renal insufficiency, renal failure. So listeners have kidney disease. Be careful, talk to your doctor. And the other is, it's rare, but hyperparathyroidism. In other words, if you have an overactive hyperparathyroid gland, where you're driving up calcium, because my wife Jan had that. She had a small adenoma, and
I remember that.
Tampa Hospital and get it resected. So if you have high calcium, from any cause, certainly like a tumor, you don't want to take, high dose vitamin D at the same time. So I'm glad.
Yeah, and it's really a seasonal thing too. For me, I'm not going to take this high of a dose during the spring, summer, and fall, but it's really the winter months that I will take this high of a dose. Now, also for SAD, Dad, what I like to recommend to people is that they get outside and get out into nature, whatever kind of exposure they can get, even if it's raining out. Like for instance, yesterday, pouring down rain, absolutely just pouring down rain. Our whole family went out to this little lake around us. We walked around it and got completely soaked. But for that hour-long period, we were outdoors, and it felt great to breathe some fresh air and to feel the rain against your face. And getting outside, even when it is snowing or raining or it's just not great weather out, is really helpful for helping with SAD. Kathy, of course, you probably know this, but exercise has been shown to really boost the mood, right? You can sort of boost certain neurotransmitters that way, and you can really feel good afterward. Those are like those endorphins that you get after exercise, or make you feel good. So whether it's going to be exercise in your home or outside, I recommend doing it on a daily basis to help with that endorphin release and your good mood. And then healthy eating, right? I mean, this goes back to everything we've been talking about today. It's like healthy sleep, it's healthy eating, it's, balancing out the amount of media that you're watching, or these emotions that you may be experiencing right now, whether it is anxiety or fear or anger. So everything that we talked about today actually goes into this question here, because really you need to be supporting all systems in the body when treating seasonal affective disorder. And, we talked about the vitamin D, the lights, all that kind of stuff. Those all matter, of course, but really it's everything that you're doing that's going to help with this as well.
Hey, Drew, you just touched upon something that I think is important. Remember when you were like 10 years old and we took a canoe trip from the tip of, the Connecticut River up into Canada, and we canoed down the Connecticut River, and we fished various, parts of the Connecticut River, and you caught this huge fish, in Vermont and stuff like that. I mean, I think you are an outdoorsman. There's no doubt about it. You've done wilderness trainings. You've lived outdoors. You've done sweat lodges with the great grandson of Sitting Bull, Walking Bull. I mean, you've done all this stuff. And you're such a blessing, not only to me, because, I think as a dad, I took you outdoors a lot, but you're doing it with your children. To bring your children into the rain and to show them that there's nothing wrong with the rain. You know what I mean? You're outdoors, and that is good parenting, because remember, children will follow what you do.
Yeah.
And since you're taking them outdoors and you're taking them fishing and you're taking them camping and you're not afraid of the rain and stuff like that, your children are going to grow up with that inculcation of the information that you transferred to them because you did it, and now they're going to do it, and they're going to do it for their children as well. So good job, son.
Oh, it's touching, Dad. It's touching as you say that. And look, you'd be even more proud. Guess what we did about 4 or 5 days ago? We went up to Whistler when it was snowing, and I took the kids sledding.
That's right.
I mean, as a kid, that's all I did. I sledded in Vermont all the time.
You sledded.
And I actually got on the sled and went down, and I realized I'm 40 years old, so it's a little different now. But anyhow, no, thanks for that. Well, let's see. Why don't we take a couple more questions here, and let's see where we're at here. This is from Rania. What should I do if CoQ10 gives me anxiety?
Oh, great question. Take less of it, Rania. Just take less. In other words, remember this. CoQ10 is an energy-supporting phytonutrient. And what I found in my practice of cardiology is some patients couldn't take a standard 30 or a 60 or 100 milligram dose. It was too much for them. In other words, why don't you build up your CoQ10 blood level by eating more salmon, migratory salmon, for example, or more sardines, which are loaded with CoQ10, or more animal product like beef, for example, or free-range bison or something like that. Because what I found is people who had low levels of CoQ10, and if I gave them a standard dose of CoQ10, some would get palpitations, some would have too much energy, some couldn't sleep, some would be jittery. So your question is well placed. Just take maybe a 10 milligram dose if you can find it, or just eat foods that have a lot of CoQ10. I remember treating a rabbi, 30 years ago. He was only 90 pounds and he had severe cardiomyopathy. And I could not give him a standard 30 milligram dose because he was saying to me, doctor, I'm jittery, I can't sleep, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I treated him with Nova Scotia lox, and he was awesome. And after 6 months, where his wife fed him, a diet more endowed with coenzyme Q10, I was able to put him on a supplement, and he felt so much better, and he didn't have the side effects of CoQ10. So thanks for asking that question, because it's not only you, it happens to about 3% of the population taking CoQ10.
And I wonder too, Dad, what if she were to take some magnesium or maybe some L-theanine, some GABA, some CBD perhaps to help with that anxiety? I don't know if that would help.
Any of that would help. Any of that would help.
I'm curious. Do a little testing on your own. We'll say that. Okay, let's do one more question here from our audience. This is from Carol. Can 10,000 units of vitamin D raise your coronary calcium?
Great question. And at that level, if you're taking in a lot of extra calcium at the same time, remember the recommendations of doctors of yesteryear was that if you were a postmenopausal woman, it was 1,500 milligrams of calcium. If you were premenopausal, with 1,000. That was old science, folks. That's old science. You don't need that much calcium. So if you're a woman of yesteryear taking in a lot of calcium and now you're doubling down or tripling down on vitamin D, yes, I have a feeling coronary calcium or coronary calcification of your smaller vessels in your heart could be problematic. So when it comes to calcium, less is more. You have to keep up with the science. And, that was a science of, 5 to 10 years ago, but it's not the science of today.
And Dad, we have, one more question here about CoQ10 while we're on the subject, and it's from Ian. I have read CoQ10 is difficult to absorb. Any tips on getting more into your cells?
Well, the secret with CoQ10 is you take it with a meal, and allegedly the fat-soluble meals are good. In other words, you could take CoQ10 with olive oil, for example. I have a lot of my colleagues who take CoQ10 with a couple of tablespoons of olive oil because of the Predimed study, showing that olive oil helps to improve longevity, reduce heart disease, reduce cancer, reduce Parkinson's disease, reduce diabetes, et cetera. So I just feel that when it comes to coenzyme Q10, the ubiquinol is a no-brainer. I mean, either or is fine. Start with smaller doses. You can take in more fat to see if you can improve the blood level, and then always go on how you're feeling. And if you're in doubt, you can always get a blood level and see where you lie.
Okay.
Remember, the normal blood level is 0.6 UGs to about 0.8 UGs per ml. When it comes to heart failure, I like 2.5, at least 2.5, which could be 4 to 5 times blood level.
And how long does it take for blood levels to rise?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah, a minimum of 3 weeks. After 3 to 4 weeks, you can get a blood level and see where you lie.
Great. Okay. Well, Dad, this has just been an awesome Ask the Doctor series here. I had a lot of fun today. Did you?
Oh yeah, this is great. And like I said, I love talking about CoQ10, and again, we're doing this textbook in cardiology that's coming out in 2022, and like I said at the beginning of the show, these CoQ10 articles are flooding the literature right now. It's just amazing.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. We loved all your questions, and we look forward to doing this again. That's our show for today, folks. If you have a question or an idea for a show topic, please send us an email or share a post with us on Facebook. And remember, if you like what you heard today and you want to be an active member of the Be Healthistic community, subscribe to our podcast at BeHealthisticPodcast.com or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your favorites. You can also find more great content and information from us and the Healthy Directions team at healthydirections.com. I'm Dr. Drew Sinatra, and this is Be Healthistic.
Thanks for listening to Be Healthistic, powered by our friends at Healthy Directions, with Doctors Drew and Steve Sinatra. See you next time.